Oh, good evening. Welcome to the Morrison County Board of Adjustment public hearing. Please join me in a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we begin, a few items. Sign in at the door if you have not done so. There's a detailed handout if needed at the door. Put any electronic devices on silent. Please note that everything is being recorded. All testimony is being recorded. Members of the Board of Adjustment are appointed by the County Board of Commissioners with one member from each of the 5 commissioner districts. Land Services staff is here to assist the Board of Adjustment with its duties. The task of the Board of Adjustment is to consider requests for variances and appeals from an order, requirement, or decision made by a county ordinance official in accordance with state law and county ordinance. Each request is considered on its own merit. The burden of proving a practical difficulty rests with the applicant. If a variance is granted, it is granted to the land, not to the landowner. There is a protocol for how we will proceed. For each variance request on the agenda, you will hear a staff report, hear testimony from the applicants. The board will discuss and gather more information as needed. Next, there will be anyone in the audience wishing to speak to the request. Each party to come to the podium, state their name, address for the record, and give their testimony. Please be as factual as possible and direct all statements and questions to me. After all testimony is complete, I will close the public hearing portion of the process. The board will then review and discuss the case in terms of our finding of fact criteria as required by Minnesota state statute and county ordinance. We will have a series of votes, discuss whether conditions be made, and have a final motion to approve or deny the request based on these findings. After this final vote on your request, you may leave if you wish. Okay. We have one item on the agenda tonight, and that is Kristen Andrews' Revocable Trust, 2297 Birchcrest Drive, Motley, application for a variance to construct a detached garage from the setback to the north property line. This is in Scandia Valley Township on Crookneck Lake. The applicant will state your name for the record.
Stephen Andrews.
Thank you. And the staff report?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a variance to construct a structure within the setback to the road. Here's the ordinance 706, which shows the right-of-way setback of 30 feet. This is a plat map showing the location of the property, shown by the red dot there. This is the application that was submitted. Additional information. Here's the site plan from the applicant. These are the renderings of the proposed structure. Here are the 3 lots that the applicant owns, with the garage going on the furthest east parcel. Here's an oblique view of the property as well. From another direction here. Here's a lake view from 2018. Another view. These are site photos from when we were on the property for viewing. So this property is in section 17 of Scandia Valley Township. It is on Crookneck Lake, which is a general development lake. The property is made up of 3 parcels and together is a non-conforming single lot, which means it's less than 30,000 square feet and 120 feet wide. The property is 150 feet wide and 24,300 square feet. So it's non-conforming, or the non-conformingness is due to the square footage. The property is served by Birchcrest Drive, which is a township road. The property is within the 9th addition to Shamata Park subdivision. This was established in 1962. Birchcrest Drive has a 66-foot wide platted road right-of-way. That 30-foot setback from the road is taken from the edge of the right-of-way, so there's little to no building envelope on this property between the lake setback and that. So that's what this is showing, the 75 approximate setback, 30 feet from the road right-of-way, and as you can see, the lines are basically touching. So according to the assessor records, a 768 square foot dwelling was built in 1963. The dwelling is approximately 10 feet from the lake. The home was built prior to land use controls. The applicant is proposing to construct a 1,300 square foot, 18-foot tall accessory structure in the northeast corner of the property. That structure would meet the 75-foot setback from the lake. It would meet the 10-foot side yard setback as well. The structure would be located where the property line starts and where the right-of-way ends. So again, here's kind of a drawing of where it would be approximately right up against the road right-of-way. Here's a kind of a copy of the survey showing the same thing. Scandal Valley Township has been on site to review this request. They submitted a letter explaining the history of the area and the use of the road and the right-of-way. The township is in support of this request. Here's their letter. I won't read it, but in summary, they are supporting the variance. The impervious surface for the project is at 15.33%. 25% impervious is allowed. Here's the shoreline assessment score for the property at an 8 out of a total possible 14. And the stormwater plans for the proposed project. So here's the site plan for the garage as well, with the plan to put gutters on and direct that towards, it will eventually drain towards the lake. The entire lot drains towards the lake. So this is the DRT review that was done and the items that were discussed. Comprehensive plan goals, natural resources, goal C2, shoreline development, goal D1, water plan and comp plan goals for surface waters, objectives B, and then under land use and development goals, objective B, and then objective D as well. 250 notices were sent. No comment was received prior to this meeting. And then here are your findings of fact and decision questions. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. I'd like to, for the record, to show that on the 1st at 1 o'clock, Darren, Marv, Clint, Brent, and John were out on site for property viewing with the applicant. And on the 3rd, Sunday, I was out at about 11 o'clock and viewed the property with the applicant. So with that said, does the applicant have anything to add to the staff report at this time?
No, nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. Board questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, John?
is an 8 score on a shoreline assessment worksheet a good score? 8 of 14.
Wouldn't get you a passing grade in high school.
So we have a,
Sure.
I don't know who's best positioned to answer that, but
I can, Mr. Chair, if you would like.
is 8 good for the impervious surface calculation? Is it good for the overall lot size? Is it good for the
Sure.
setbacks? What's the,
So is this score good? To answer that question, I would say, yeah, it's a pretty good score in that really the main thing that's driving this appearing maybe low is the lack of vegetative cover in that first 50 feet. You know, he gave less than 25% covered in shrubs and trees. You know, when we were out there, it might actually be a little more than that. And just looking at, there's actually a lot of tree cover canopy. So it possibly could be bumped up even a little bit, actually, depending upon how you look at that. I didn't have any major concerns myself, just being out there with the proposed plan and the way it was going. But yeah, the way this is meant to be used, a 0 for no active erosion happening at the shoreline. It was rip-wrapped, so we're not having any issues there. Solid vegetation where there wasn't anything else. There was no active erosion happening on site, so that's why that received the 7. The vegetative cover is kind of the one thing that's driving this down a little bit, but it is over 50%, which the way this is developed is actually not a bad score.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to add to that a little, when I was viewing the site on Sunday, the applicant and I discussed that at pretty good detail. Also, it's never going to score high with a house within the first 50 feet of, or, the cabin within the first 50 feet of the shoreline. It just, that precludes a low score. So anything within the shore impact zone is going to give it a low score there. But maybe you could, Steve, review some of the things that we talked about and what you and your wife have in mind for improving vegetation on the property, or at least maintaining it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the goal would be to actually irrigate it, so you could have grass. This year is probably not the ideal year for grass growth in the county, so it was pretty burned off. So the hope was to actually have grass that's actually functioning and green, which would be a shock for the first 50 feet. As far as tree coverage, obviously getting water to some of those trees. Those red oaks were in distress. We had one go down this year, so those have been watered. From a tree coverage standpoint, we should have room for a couple more. There's one on the opposite side of the cabin. And to Darren's point, I had no idea when answering these questions, to be frank, on if that was like on the ground coverage or the aerial or what. But we've lost 2 distinct row of trees with the water coming up so high. So the hope would be to plant trees around the east side to get some reestablished there, while still maintaining the view, and keeping the front shoreline lawn, hopefully irrigated and green versus dead.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Clint.
so I was reading through the DRT thing, so how high, you have 18-foot tallest, it would be 18 feet tall sidewalls, what you're planning on this building?
Yeah, the proposed is 1710.
Okay.
And the square footage is 1288 as the plan sits right now.
But in this here, I don't know what she's talking about, and it says 10-foot sidewall is the maximum height.
Correct.
You understand what that means, Darren?
Yes. So what is allowed is a 10-foot sidewall, 18-foot overall height. So the second story is going to allow for that
Oh,
total up. So it's a 10-foot sidewall, 18-foot total.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So not an 18-foot sidewall.
That's what-
Yeah, and when talking to the lumberyard, they just said basically
Yep.
where you're setting the rafters
Yep.
is the sidewall. I don't have any idea, but he
Yep.
said it was 9. Basically, it's 9
Yep.
Sure.
Okay.
by
All
the
right.
proposal.
Okay. Then the other one here on here, it says, having the township speak to the fact that they are good with not meeting the setback would be good. So, that was mentioned in there when we were out there on Friday. Dan Sagner, is that a Sanger? He was from the township. He met with all of us and he went through it, actually helped kind of decipher a lot of this. And so he was out there also, Dave, and he actually gave us what the township really said. They were fine with this. Sound like most of the supervisors were out there ahead of time and looked at the property, and they all agreed that they were all for this project. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
Okay, very good. Any other comments, questions?
I do have a comment.
Oh, go
So
ahead.
with talking with Dan, we're all out there. So on this project here, what we're thinking about is he's too close to the road right away. Actually, his corner of his property's a third of the way in his neighbor's driveway. So then when we look at this whole project, there's, I'd call it a cul-de-sac, but a turnaround just west of his driveway basically, or where it comes to his property line. And that's where the township said they quit plowing snow there anyways. So that's why they said that they think even putting this building in, when they looked at it, that they agreed that there's still plenty of room to get in emergency vehicles as far as fire, ambulances, things like that. Another thing to look at is we don't have this a lot of times. I know we're encroaching on the road right away, but on the opposite side, there's that big bank. If ever needed to be in the future added on, that bank could kind of get shaved out of there too. So a lot of times there's somebody that lives right there, so that gets to be tight and pinched in there. Just some observations I had, and I'm sure you guys had the same thing, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that comment, that bank on the other side of the road is actually public property, and it's, it's something the township doesn't want to abandon, and it's a buffer. It's a good thing to have land that's not in use, especially in that area. Any other thoughts? If not, I'll open it up for the public. As little as there is out there, even though, how many notices were sent? A massive number. Pardon me? 250. You have a lot of neighbors. So is there any public comment? I'm going to ask 3 times. Any public comment? No public comment. We'll close this portion of the meeting to public comments. Okay, that's a formality we need to do. Wish there would be more public. So are we ready to go over the questions? Okay. Darren, if we could go to the screen with the questions on it. I'm thinking I'm forgetting something here, but I don't know what it is, so we'll just continue. It'll come to me or not. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Brent, would you start us out?
Sure. I think it's in harmony with the general purposes. He's making an attempt to put a garage in with a lakeshore home. He's not able to do that without a variance. There is a process for applying for a variance. He's sought out the township so that he can maintain 75 feet of distance from the shoreline, and requesting a variance with the township's approval to encroach on the setback to a right-of-way for this project. And I think that is in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance.
Okay, anybody else like to add to that? I'd just like to add that, there's, after completion of the project will be 15% or less impervious surface on the property. I'd like to remind property owners from time to time that, 25% isn't the goal, that's the maximum. The goal would be the less impervious surface, the better, and 15% is a very, a good number. There is when the applicant leaves if we approve this and the applicant leaves with a building permit, he will have an erosion control plan in place and a stormwater plan in place, and that's alluded to in his temporary stormwater plan that's in the packet, and final stabilization. So that will be in place. So that is consistent with the intent and purpose of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan, along with, as Brent said, the meeting all other setbacks other than just that road setback and unusual circumstances involved here and complete buy-in by the township, so. Anybody like to add to number 1? Okay, number 2 is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance. I'll start out with that. You know, this is a unique property. All the, you just drive along Birchcrest Road and that's all you see is unique properties, non-complying or non-conforming but complying properties. This property is 150 feet long, which is a very big plus. A lot of times we see applications like this for a 50 or 75 foot or 100 foot lot that is less than the 120 foot minimum standard for the for the county in Morrison County. It's under the 30,000 square feet, so it's a shallow lot, which kind of brings us to the fact that not much building envelope available. Yeah, 150 feet of shoreline makes this a very reasonable request in that the amount of use that the property will receive with this added building and the small cabin that is already there. Anybody else on number 2? Number 3, will the issuance of variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Clint?
Yes, I believe it will. Like you said, he has 3 lots. There's like 150 feet of shoreline. He's staying, what we really like is he's staying the 75 feet back away from the lake. He meets the side property line. He's a little too close to the road right away, but I think the way that that road is designed there and things like that, I think that's what puts him in a bind here. But yes, to maintain the essential character of the locality, up and down there's cabins all along there from the roadside and the lakeside that you see that have a cabin and a accessory structure. He's proposing to build the accessory structure to the right size. He's not going to go over the height limit or any of that. So I do believe that it will maintain the essential character of the locality.
Okay, any additions to that? Move on to question number 4. Start with John on that one. Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property?
It's been said a couple times here, you have a shallow lot, you got the township road pressing, but they were on site and in favor of this. You own part of your neighbor's driveway, which is cutting the corner on your property as well. So it is certainly due to the it's certainly unique to this property.
Okay. Anybody like to add to that? Okay. Good with question number 4. Number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Marv?
Yes, and one thing I want to point out, did an excellent job of filling this out here, and I mean, not often do we see him this thorough, and I'll basically use what you did here. The need arose post the land survey and conducted and attached a township discussion around the property line setback, and you meet all the other setbacks, and you had numerous conversations with the township. And here, after the survey, you realize this here. So that's, and you've got a lot that's condensed, 3 lots, 150 feet. I mean, which is huge. And usually we see them under that, tight lots, 2,400 square feet. Not quite a full lot, but it condensed it. So in this, the way the lots are in the survey kind of pinched it in there, creating this.
Okay, thank you, Marv. Anybody else like to add to that? Number 6 is does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than economic considerations? Brent?
I think it does. This is a unique property, as everybody has already stated. Again, it's got a compressed building envelope when you look at the 75-foot setback and the road right-of-way being there at 60-plus feet. Trying to accommodate a garage while still maintaining a 75-foot setback, 10-foot sideline, and the neighboring driveway that takes up a part of this, which has been found out by the survey. I think it involves a lot more than just economic considerations moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Any additions to number 6? Okay, we haven't discussed any conditions. Are there any conditions necessary?
I don't see any. I mean, one would have been the guttering, but I don't know if we have to condition that, because if he don't gutter it, it's gonna all sit on the north side of his shed, so that'd be a big detriment to him, so I don't think there's really a need for that. I don't know.
Mr. Chair, we spent a lot of time discussing this out there, and as Darren walked us down to the lake, and he seen there was basically a buffer there where the water would be entrapped before it catch the lake. He had no concerns, and after seeing that, the lay of the land, I have no concerns either here.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Brent.
Just another observation there from the site viewing. That appears to be all sand soil there, and regardless of what you do with the water, it's going to filter through the sand, get down to the berm, lay there momentarily before it gets absorbed and filtered back before the lake. So it's very unique in that regard. You know, it's not a clay based where it's going to run right down in there. It's soil or sand. Which is important. Tough to get grass growing in sand, but you know, that'll come with some shade and some water if we actually get some in Minnesota.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Anybody else? So, no conditions necessary. Are we ready to vote on the questions?
Yes.
Okay, is request in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And Marvin?
Yes.
Number 2 is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the Land Use Ordinance. Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
And Brent?
Yes.
Number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Clint?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And myself is yes. Number 4 is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property. John?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. And Clint?
Yes.
Number 5 is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners. Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
Number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And Marvin?
Yes.
Okay, all the questions have been answered to the affirmative. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd make that motion
Which one is that?
to approve this.
Okay.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Motion is made and seconded to approve this variance request. Any discussion on the motion? There's no discussion. We'll take a roll vote. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Aye.
And John?
Aye.
And Marvin?
Aye.
Ayes have it. The motion carries and the variance request is granted, and you know what to do.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Take good care of that place.
Yeah.
It's a nice one.
Thanks, guys.
So
Appreciate it.
Steve, you just, now after this is approved, so now you should be able to just go to Land Services and get the proper permitting.
Perfect.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yep, thank you.
Fourth, fifth?
9-5.
Dang, it was the fifth this morning, and it still is, huh? All right, okay, is there a motion on the minutes? Any errors, Marv? You're our standard guy that catches all of them.
Well, I don't know if there was maybe very minor. I'm not worried about it. What I've seen here, I'm making a recommendation. We approve the minutes as.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, minutes accepted as presented. Any new business? Old business? A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
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 I think I did, yeah.